What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are having a great day. My name's Anthony, and today we're going to do something a little bit different, but we're going to do a book recommendation, and it's going to be on the Woodland Homestead. I'm going to be completely honest with y'all. When I made the decision that I wanted to live this lifestyle, the homesteading, self-reliance lifestyle, one of the first things that I had considered in my head was I got to be able to find a piece of property. Just like, that's like the starting point of everything. And I decided to come back to my native South Carolina when I got out of the military because I know the area, I know the climate, and I really liked the fact that everything was cheap enough where I could afford it. So I rented a house, and long story short, I saved up so I could buy the property that I'm on now. But one of those things that I guess I never really considered was the fact that in order to do what I got to do, I have to have, I thought was I had to have a clear-cut piece of property. And in reality, that's, couldn't be any further from the truth because there's a lot of benefits to living on a wooded property. But in my head, if I wanted to homestead, if I wanted to have chickens, goats, whatever animals I want to have in the future, livestock, fruit trees, garden, whatever, I had to have everything completely cleared out. When in reality, that's not true at all, and I guess I couldn't see that because I didn't know any better. So insert this book right here. My wife got me this book about 3 years ago for Christmas, I think. It was the Christmas for my birthday, and I had already bought the property and I was already doing what I needed to do to try to clear out everything. But I guess all the work that I had been doing to try to clear out this woods, at least make it the way I wanted, was kind of in vain because in South Carolina, every time you clear something, you're going to lose about a third of that over the course of the summertime from vines and growth coming back. So you're basically fighting nature. So insert this book. I had read a few, small reviews online. I had kind of come across it. I don't even know how I came across the book, but I wanted to see what it had to say because that's what I was living, a homestead in the woods. And I wanted to try to curtail what I was fighting to see if there's a better way to get rid of some of the stuff I was trying to get rid of. What I hadn't considered, though, was the fact that a lot of the things that I was trying to get rid of were valuable resources that I could use to my benefit. Brings me to the first chapter of this book. It's titled Seeing the Forest Through the Trees, How to Unlock Your Woodland's Potential. And this chapter basically changed my entire mindset of how I viewed my property. It showed me when I was walking through how I can tell what kind of woods I have or what kind of trees I had, the potential I could unlock in terms of making money off of it, but also being able to sustain my family and my, everything I got basically off of what these woods can give me. And I know what you're thinking, hey, only 4 acres of woods, it's not really a lot, but in reality, there's a lot of things that you can do with just 1 acre. And I wanted to go ahead and read one piece that really struck me for y'all. That way maybe you can understand why this chapter just kind of struck me so hard. And it said, just what can the Woodland Homestead offer? Consider this. In a single year on a 1 acre homestead forest, you can do the following. Grow a face cord of firewood, harvest 5 bushels of fruit from your homestead orchard, make 2 gallons of maple syrup, save more than $200 by growing your own fence posts, grow over $100 worth of wild mushrooms, save more than $300 on feed for your small livestock by using natural forage, and grow enough willow whips to where you can weave a basket for your own harvests. Now I know that doesn't seem like a lot of stuff, but that's just 1 acre. I got 4 of those. So it really kind of opened up, hey, I really need to start paying attention to what kind of woods I have here because there could be some resources that I'm not seeing and I need to go find out what they are. So just in the first chapter, this book taught me how to calculate my own basal area, basically the density of trees to see if the trees are overpopulated or underpopulated, being able to tell if my forest or if my woods are a mature or a young forest, being able to tell the difference. I'm also able to tell the difference between coppicing and standards, the trees that I want to keep and the trees that I want to cut. Not to mention I'm able to find out what trees are good for firewood that I can cut and then use for the following years after that when they shoot out new growth. I started to look at my woods through the eyes of a forest manager, someone who's going to look at the way that things can be made to help you out. Now, little known fact, when the European settlers came over here to the United States or to the Americas, they were able to tell that there were natives, that there were people here because of the way the forest looked from the boats. When you're looking obviously at shore, you can tell when you see managed woods or managed forest versus just wild called growth. And they were able to see from the boat that, hey, there was some managed woods going on here, managed forests. So obviously there had to be people. So that's why when they came aboard or came ashore, they saw that, hey, you know what, there were people present. So upon reading that chapter, I was able to turn what I thought was just going to be hunting property into something much more useful. Yeah, I can still hunt on it, but there's plenty of other things that I can do, and I'm going to get into that throughout the further chapters. Chapter 2 talks about the tools and equipment you're going to need to manage a forest property. Things ranging from different types of axes to chainsaws to actually how to fell a tree, how to cut one down the old school way with an axe or with a chainsaw. Something that a lot of people don't understand, and the detail that this thing goes into is outstanding, because it's not just, hey, make a 45-degree cut and drop your tree. No, it's talking about all different kinds of things that you wouldn't even think to consider, and that's why I really like this book, because it puts into context things that you don't even know you don't know. So when you read this stuff, you're like, wow, I'd never even considered that, and that totally can save my life or make something 10 times easier. So the second chapter alone is well worth it. Even if you think you know a lot about tools like I did, I still learned a lot that I never even considered. Now the third chapter focuses on something I had never heard of before, but once I saw it, I said, wow, I really got to try this, and it's called silvopasture. What I didn't realize was that you can put livestock in pasture that's wooded. Now I'm used to driving by and seeing cattle farms and whatever else, just these big giant open fields with maybe one or two trees there. I never even considered the fact that you can have cows, pigs, goats, whatever in a wooded environment. So being able to read this chapter and seeing what I'm actually capable of makes total sense, especially the fact if I'm going to be raising goats. Since goats are browsers, they much prefer to browse around shrubbery versus eating grass. It just makes total sense to be able to use my property to that advantage. Now, chapter 4 is especially important because it talks about coppicing wood. Now, some of you are like, what the hell does that mean? That's exactly how I was. I had never heard of the term coppicing before, but basically it is a reproduction method where a tree is cut back periodically to stimulate new growth through dormant buds on the stool or stump. Basically, when you cut down a tree or cut a tree, the new growth that shoots up from it, using that to your advantage. I hadn't even considered that idea. I was like, wow, once I cut a tree down, I probably got to remove the stump. That way I can put something else in its place. But in reality, I can leave the stumps there and use them to my advantage. That's what chapter 4 is all about, and it really does make a lot of sense. So coppicing for fodder, coppicing for charcoal, tool handles, all that stuff is in this chapter, and I highly suggest you concentrate on that if that's what you're interested in. Now chapter 5 jumps into woodland structures, ways that you can take some of your woods and make structures out of them, ideas that you can have if you want to grow certain types of woods for like living fence posts or fence posts in general. It's a pretty self-explanatory chapter. It's one of those chapters that I really didn't focus on too much, but as I've progressed in what I'm doing, I'm actually kind of going back and rereading it, because there are things like living fences and the living barn and shelter barns that I hadn't considered, and it's a really good idea if you really think about it from a practical and money-saving standpoint. Alright, so chapter 6 was all about growing trees, fruit trees more specifically, but also about other ways to grow food, using the trees that you may have to grow food. So say you're making a natural trellis, but more or less having a homestead orchard. There are times where I think I literally got to cut all of this down just so I could put apple tree, pear tree, whatever. But in reality, I can keep a lot of these trees for so much shade or so much soil protection just so I can keep my orchard protected. Because like any monoculture out there, if you put one type of tree or two types of trees in an area, you're probably going to get destroyed by pests. So if you can intermix everything throughout what you already have, there's a really good chance that those pests will bypass what you're trying to do. So when it comes down to homestead orchards, having one that's kind of in the middle of nothing leaves you open to pests and disease and whatnot. But if you can kind of intermix, that's one of the things I learned from this book, if you can intermix in between the woods, there's a really good chance you're going to be successful. And I had not considered that, so that's why I'm glad when I got this book, I really learned that. Not to mention, if you have an older area, if you live in an older area, say you bought a farm from 100 years ago and there's an old orchard on the property, but you really don't know how to kickstart it, this chapter goes into how to do that as well. So you can take some of the really old apple trees that aren't producing anymore and get them to produce again. And finally, chapter 7 is all about harvesting food from the forest floor. Basically, this chapter is going to show you how to do some wild edibles, how to cultivate mushrooms, not find wild mushrooms, but to actually take logs off your property and inoculate them with spores that you may get commercially offline or wherever else. It'll show you how to do that. And this is also the chapter where I learned the Hugelkultur method that I've used extensively in my garden so far, and I never really even considered that. And since reading this book, that's what got me started in that. If you want to see a video on my Hugelkultur garden, I'll go ahead and put that down below in the description, so you can go back to a couple beds that I built with the Hugelkultur method, and those by far are the best beds that I have compared to just growing in the ground or just a standard raised bed. So if you are considering Hugelkultur method, I highly suggest doing that, because that has been leaps and bounds one of the most amazing performers in my garden. So that'll bring me to the end of this video. These are some of the things that I learned in this book. I highly suggest, if you have a property in woods or adjacent to woods or somewhere around where you're about to, you know, try to put a house in the middle of the woods, I highly suggest you buying this book. Like, again, it's called the Woodland Homestead by Brad McLeod. You can get it off Amazon for like $15. I'll go ahead and put a link down below. It is an affiliate link, so just know that if you buy, you're helping this channel, and it's no extra cost to you. So I just want to go ahead and add that in there. But yeah, this book is a great book. I don't usually do a lot of book reviews on this channel, but I think I'm going to start doing more, because I'm constantly reading. There's a lot of people out there who the most reading they're going to do is like a billboard or a text message, but for me, I read every single day, and I think that that's the reason why I'm able to take some of the things that I've read in these books, use them on my property, and be successful. And I want to try to at least show y'all that you can do that same thing by taking some of the things that you may have pulled off the shelf and been like, you know what, that's a really good idea, I'm going to try that, and it works. So that's why I wanted to recommend this book, because this has been a very good book for me in the last 3 years that I've had it, and I'm definitely going to be I keep rereading it every single year, and I always seem to find something new that I may have glossed over. So I just want to go ahead and put that in here. If you learned something from this video, please do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I'll catch you all in the next one, okay?